Hey, so we're bulk filming today and I don't feel like changing my sweatshirt. So we're just gonna deal with it that you saw this exact same face and outfit in the last video. Hi, my name is Adriana and this is my reading wrap up for the month of September. Man, September really just like flew by in the blink of an eye. It's absolutely bonkers, but whatever. We're here. We're in October. We're doing our best. Let's talk about some books. So as per usual, I will be starting with my stats, which I have here on my lap. So I read a total of 8 books. That was 1,954 pages with my eyeballs. That was 41 hours of audiobook. That is crazy. That is a lot of audiobook. My average length of my eyeball reads was 390.8 pages, and my average rating was a 3.3, which is not that good, but here we are. So looking at that ratings breakdown, I didn't have any 5 stars in the month of September, 2 4 stars, 2 3.5, 3 3s, and 1 2 star. As far as the format in which I read these books, 1 was hardback, 3 were ebooks, 3 were audiobooks, and 1 was paperback. Of these books, I bought 2 of them. 2 of them I got from the library, 3 of them I got from the publisher, and 1 of them I already owned. And then my genre breakdown, 1 historical fiction, 1 mystery thriller, 1 romance, 4 fantasy, and 1 sci-fi. So before we jump into the book by book breakdown, please consider liking and commenting on this video and subscribing to my channel if you like bookish things. Just going chronologically, the first book I completed in September was the Book of Gothel. I read this as an audiobook. I had just heard Elliot Brooks talk about this a couple times on her channel and thought it sounded interesting. It's very long and I'm not sure I loved the framing device of this book. I mean, I gave it 3 stars, so like I enjoyed it enough, but it just felt like overly long and complicated. I guess what this book is, it's kind of a fairy tale retelling of Mother Gothel from the Rapunzel story. So kind of repainting her in a different light, which was like interesting. And I did really like the ending and the way everything kind of wrapped up, but it was very long. It felt like we did a lot of things that weren't really that necessary. The second book I finished was, where did I just put that? Dead Mountain, one of the books I hauled in September. I read in September, which crazy. We love to see it. We love to see us reading the books we buy. I just caused a whole mess. I guess I'd mentioned this in my book haul that I did last week. This is the 4th book in the Nora Kelly series. The Nora Kelly series follows this archaeologist named Nora Kelly who is friends with an FBI agent named Corey Swan, and Corey is a very green FBI agent and tends to rope Nora into all of these crazy FBI cases. So this is another one. And it was very fun, and I read it in a weekend, and it was a very good time. Just something on like the stakes of this series are becoming a little bit weird for me as a reader. In the end of the last book, Nora Kelly gets with this like billionaire. She's like dating this like billionaire guy now. And so it just kind of like weirds me out that like it ruins a lot of the stakes for me, because in this one, like, a character gets into like some really bad legal trouble. There's like just some other stuff that happened too, where it's like one call to billionaire boyfriend and this would not be a problem anymore. Like, why are we not just like calling the billionaire boyfriend for everything? And that was something I talked about when I finished Diablo Mesa, the 3rd book in the series. When she got together with billionaire boyfriend, and I don't even remember his name, I just always remember him as billionaire boyfriend, I knew it was going to hinder my enjoyment of the series, because every single time like Nora Kelly got in a problem, I was just gonna be like, why just not call billionaire boyfriend? Just call him. He will solve this issue. He has money to throw at it, and as we know, money solves everything. But I still really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 what did I give it? I guess I gave it 3.5 stars. I think, like I said, I think that really does hinder my enjoyment, is not, like, I know in this series Nora Kelly's gonna be fine either way, but like, not, it just feels like a little weird. I also didn't really like the resolution of one of the mystery aspects of this. It just felt a little lazy to me. But yeah, I mean, I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time reading it. I'm gonna give it 3.5, even though I had some fairly large issues with it. The next book I finished was Popisho. I loved this book, but it was just a very hard read. Like, I thought this book was so well constructed and so beautiful, but like, it's very, very slow and very, very lyrical. And for me as a reader, those just aren't really two things I typically look for in my books. Like, I'm glad it was there, and like I said, I did enjoy it, but it just took me forever to read this book. I think let me see how many days it took me to get through this book. Yeah, it took me 17 days to get through this book, like over 2 weeks. That's a long time for me personally to get through a book. And like, yes, this is fairly chunky. I have it at like 464 pages. But even then, like, it's very slow paced, very slice of life, magical realism. I'm glad I read it, and I'm like, I will keep it on my shelves. I did enjoy it, but it was just not particularly tailored to me as a reader, but not everything has to be. And I can still enjoy something even if I had to read it slow. But like I mentioned, it's kind of a slice of life into this mystical island of Popisho and the residents and their life, and it explores a lot of like sex and relationships, and it's based on like Caribbean culture, which was really cool for me. I don't think I've ever read a book with like a basis in Caribbean culture. I have like the opposite problem of like this book as I did with Dead Mountain. Like, objectively, I think this is a really good book and I really enjoyed it, but like the actual reading experience was not as enjoyable for me. Versus like Dead Mountain, objectively not a great book, and I had a lot of problems with it, but I had so much fun reading it. Like, this one was not like super fun for me to read, but I really am glad I read it, if that makes sense. The next audiobook I listened to was Where You See Yourself. This was the one like romance I said I had, but it's not really a romance. It's like a YA contemporary coming of age story. I read this for the Silly Goose Book Club, and I don't think Noelle has had the live show for this yet, but I have read it now, so I'm ready for whenever that live show does happen. This is the story of a senior in high school, and she has chronic illness of some sort. I think it might be... See, this is what happens when I read things so fast. I don't remember what kind of chronic illness she has. But it has ended up with her in a wheelchair, and she is having to deal with not only like getting through her senior year of high school, but applying for colleges and figuring out like what college is going to be the best fit for her. Just, I don't know. It just like, it was really, I really loved this book. I'm in this babbling stage now. I'm so glad this book exists, and I really, really loved it. And it's so cool to know that young people in wheelchairs are going to have access to this book for the rest of time. And I hope that, you know, this was even fun for me as like someone who does not have a chronic illness or like is in a wheelchair. But I think especially for people who are in a wheelchair and in high school and going through these, this is going to be like so validating and like so uplifting to see Effie, our main character, like live her life and have struggles but overcome them, and have such an amazing supportive group of friends helping her through it, and also like struggling with some of her friends and sometimes herself not being a great friend but getting through that too. Like, there's just so much like good stuff in this book, and I really, really liked it. And the narrator is Ali Stoker, who is this girl from Glee, which like I didn't realize that it was her until like the very end when they were doing the interview, and I was like actually, I guess, paying attention to like just her natural voice as opposed to like her narrator voice, like, and I was like, I really recognize her from somewhere. And then I looked up the narrator, and it's this girl from Glee. I guess she's a woman now with children, but to me she will always be this girl from Glee because I was sucked into Glee as a high schooler in choir. Anyway, moving on. Very good book. Very much enjoyed it. Gave it 4 stars. Official recommend to anybody who is interested in a very good YA coming of age with some disability rep and just very good. Very, very good book. The next book I had finished in September is The Roads We Take. This was an arc from NetGalley. It starts out as a very grounded historical fiction, and then the last 20% is crazy. I started this book in like, oh cool, like it's a very cool like historical fiction about this woman who went to med school in the 1880s in Canada. She's like going out west to try to like strike out on her own. I don't know what cliche I'm trying to say here, but she's going out west. She's gonna try to start her own medical practice. She's like doing the most, and then she like gets to this town and like gets involved with the community, and it's like starting to get like a little like soap opera-y. But then, like I said, that last 20%, full on Days of Our Lives. Full on, what's another one? My mom was a Days of Our Lives gal, so I don't even remember any of the other soap operas, but very much that. Very much soap opera. And like, I liked it. I'm not gonna lie. I very much enjoyed it. Like, it's fun to be able to get both in one book. Once like very grounded, heartbreaking historical fiction, and then crazy, dramatic, happy ending soap opera. Why not both? Like, this author literally said, "Por qué no los dos?" We love to see it. I also gave this one 4 stars. The next book I finished was Athena's Child. This was another NetGalley arc, but from what I can tell after a little bit of research, this seems to be a like indie published, like Kindle Unlimited sort of book that is now getting picked up and published traditionally. And it very much gives like independently published, just straight A to B Greek mythology retelling. I think the author had some really interesting things that they wanted to say. I just don't know if it was necessarily like said throughout the whole thing. So this is another one, like the last 20% felt very different than like the first 80% of the book. Like the last 20% was the thesis, the theme that the author wanted to portray, but there wasn't enough of it integrated through the rest of the story to make it really land like it should have. So I gave this one 3 stars. Again, a very like traditional A to B to C to Z retelling of the Medusa story. If you're just looking for a straight up Medusa retelling, this is a pretty good one. And it's pretty short. It's only like 190 pages, I think. The next book I finished was also a NetGalley arc, although I think it came out like in like May, and I just haven't gotten to it yet, but I finished it. And that is The Ferryman by Justin Cronin, I think his name is. And it seems like he's written some other like really big books, and I've never read any of his other stuff, but this was a sci-fi dystopian kind of story, and it was very like formulaic. I don't know if they were meant to be twists, but I feel like if you've read like the sci-fi dystopian genre at all, you knew exactly what was happening in this story like the whole time. And it's very long. It's another like very, very long book. Overly long. We could have cut out pretty big chunks of things. And I like I had mentioned, it's a very like formulaic sci-fi dystopian. I felt like I was back in high school, reading my Hunger Games, reading my Divergent, reading my... What were some of the other ones I read? Man, I really wish I would have kept my books from like middle school and high school, because I don't even remember like all the stuff I read back in the day. Very much giving sci-fi dystopian. Matched was another one I read that I'm remembering now, except it was like aged up to adult, so the themes were much more focused on like family and like legacy, and I guess just more stuff that like adults would worry about versus like, you know, the YA sci-fi dystopians of the 2010s where it was more like kind of teenager problems. This was definitely like, I felt like it was written for adults with adult themes. Not like it was like super spicy, but whatever, but like just adult themes that would appeal to adults. And I enjoyed it, and I thought it was pretty good, but just very generic. So I gave it a 3.5, I think. Yeah, 3.5. Pretty pretty solid. And then the last book I read in September was Legendborn. I read this for the Shelf This Book Club. Bailey and Ashley recently had the live show for the Shelf This Book Club for this. Bailey is the host. Ashley was the co-host who picked this book. And I think it was like kind of a general consensus amongst the book club that this was not our favorite. And Bailey and I both listened to the audiobook, and I think that was probably a mistake. I think if you are going to set yourself up to enjoy this, you really need to read it physically. And I hate to blame things on the narrator, but like I just don't think the narrator was very good for this book. She didn't do a lot of like differentiation between characters. And just the way the book is written, there's not always a lot of context for like who is saying what dialogue, and there's a lot of characters going on. So it'd probably be good just to read this physically so you can like reread certain parts if you need to. You can mark like when characters are introduced. But I guess about this book, it is a retelling of the King Arthur tales from Britain. I'm not a huge like Knights of the Round Table girly. I did watch Merlin like way back in the day. Can't remember much about it, but I enjoyed the show. This book was not my fave, and it does this thing where like it's set at a college, but all the characters are in like this early college admission. So like our main character is 16, but because she's in this program, she's like in college. And it's just kind of weird, and I didn't really like it. I mean, that specific aspect of it. I did like that the author was like doing the most with like tackling themes of grief and generational trauma and racism in academics, and like this author was doing the absolute most. And this is her debut novel, so like it seems like we could have used a couple more rounds of editing. We could have done a couple more rounds of maybe like some beta readers to kind of like shape this up a little bit. I think it was just pushed out a little too early. It could have been much, much shorter. And I think it really would have benefited from being like aged up into kind of like that new adult category. Like let all of the characters be 18 through 22. Let's not do this early college admission thing, because that just kind of threw me off the whole time. Hate to end it on a bummer. I gave this 2 stars. Like, I do see, like, why some people really, really enjoyed it. You know, all diversity in fantasy is, like, worthwhile. And I am glad that this book exists for people who love fantasy and want to see themselves represented. I hope we get more books. I mean, not that this is the exact same vibe, but I think Caitlin Bayron's This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate kind of give the same vibe, where it is YA fantasy. It's a Greek mythology retelling instead of a Knights of the Round Table retelling. So maybe I am personally biased, but it is a young black girl, and I think the story, things make sense for like a young black girl instead of just like taking a 16-year-old girl and putting her in college. It's a 16-year-old girl and like going through things that make sense, and her parents are involved in the story because she's 16. I'm glad this book exists. I just personally didn't love it. So those are all of the books I read in September. Please let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought. And thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.